Corporate life in Russia and in Europe is different. I used to work in Russia for 12 years and right now I live and work in the Netherlands. And many corporate culture related things back home used to feel normal before I knew it can be any different. And some I kind of always considered ridiculous, but Russian business culture is as diverse as Russian people. And many people of my generation are actually fighting these old business practices that they also find damaging and useless. So I think in this video, I will try to summarize, let's say, the goods and the bads of the Russian business working culture. Fair warning. I'll be talking about my opinions and my observations that I see in the world and within myself. And to a certain extent, we will be talking about national stereotypes. They exist, it's nothing new. And of course, it's a generalization with exceptions from it. Your experience may not be the same as mine. And I also know that I can make 1,000 disclaimers and there will still be people who will get upset. It's okay, I accept it as a part of the human nature, but I still think that what I'm about to share with you is worth sharing. Let's go. And the first part I want to dedicate to hierarchy and power dynamics in Russian business. A solid majority of the companies I used to work for in Russia were quite hierarchical, which basically means that you cannot even imagine a junior employee approaching a senior person with a suggestion or critique or feedback. It's like there is always a distance depending on in what position you are, in what grade you are. And funnily enough, it was actually the same for Russian companies and for international companies in Russia. And I think the exceptions were rather connected to a specific manager who decided not to kind of keep this power dynamic and hierarchy in the relationship with his or her direct reports. So it was more specific person kind of exceptions, not from company to company. In general, I think that based on your role and your status, let's say, you will be treated differently. People are kind of less inclined to argue with you if you're a manager, even though if you're doing something absolutely obviously stupid. And in my mind, it's kind of like double-edged sword in a way that when you're just an employee, you're not a manager, you observe this atmosphere and you start treating others based on their grade as well, because everyone around you is doing that. But the moment you become manager yourself, it is very hard not to require the same treatment towards you because you've experienced the other side when you were just an employee. Also, there is something that I would call a culture of a strong leader, meaning that there is a certain perception that if you're a director, if you're like in the leadership positions, you have to be very, very tough, like very strong, very serious. It is expected for you to be like very masculine in a way, and it has interesting real life implications. For example, I observed multiple times that if a leader like that is consulting with someone, this leader can be considered weak. And like, we understand, right? Like logically it doesn't make any sense, but it kind of feels like that. It puts a leader on such a distant pedestal, is this an English word? Pedestal? That's the pressure on the decision making and everything associated with that is insane. And I saw very talented people who struggled to get promoted because they did not have this in them, this kind of vibe of I'm a strong leader and, like I rule with the strong hands. Like, now, in many companies I used to work for in Russia, the actually important decisions were often made by a very small group of people. These decisions were not discussed with people that they will actually affect. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it is business, of course, it happens all the time. But I think it's kind of a little bit of an extreme case of that. So the group is super small sometimes, very small. And also a real decision power is rarely delegated. So if you work in a relatively big company, even if you're on managerial role, senior manager, or even like director's role, like of course you have a certain decision making power, but really impactful decisions, even allocated for your area, like it's always you need to get many approvals, it will not be up to you. So in a nutshell, the approach to decision making is not really inclusive. And I saw a lot of people using the term paternalistic culture, which practically means we limit your autonomy for your own good. I think it describes this aspect of the Russian business culture quite well. Another, I would say, consequence of this hierarchy and power dynamic is a culture of non-transparency. And here's what I mean by that. I've witnessed multiple times cases where, for example, your management is asking you to tell the truth, show honest numbers or honest statistics, and when you actually do that, you are in the end punished for that. And I mean, it happens suspiciously often. Not everywhere, of course, but in many companies, people have this common sense that, like, of course you don't say full truth to your management because of course it will backlash you in the end. I think this one is kind of changing now, especially if you're working in non-government related companies, in actual business that is interested in, growth. And associated with the previous one, there is actually a big fear of mistake. I think in general, we Russians are kind of risk-avoidant people, and it is also reflected in the working culture, right? So it's kind of safer to follow the protocol, not taking any risks. Like, it is safer for you as an employee. Now, there is one more thing here that is so incredibly hard to explain, but I will try my best. Imagine this. You work in a team under a certain manager, and your manager is saying to all of you, hey guys, so you have Bob in the team. Bob is a good worker, the best worker, try to be like Bob. And after that, we're kind of hating Bob because feels like he's the reason that we're not appreciated. What I try to show with this example is actually called ressentiment, a word that a lot of Russians know. It is a mix of resentment, jealousy, and hate towards someone that we consider as a reason of our struggles, of our poor position in the society, for example. Ressentiment is when we assign pain that accompanies our sense of failure to an external something or someone. So consider this. There are many people who are having this deep hate towards wealthy people or people in power or even people that just have means to enjoy their life. Can you imagine what leaders will they be when they will occupy a managerial position at some point of their career? It's basically a very twisted love and hate relationship with power. So no wonder, considering all that, why employees sometimes don't like their managers. And I think a lot of us are having this resentment within us, of course, with a different magnitude, but it is actually very hard to get rid of it. Reflection helps, therapy does help as well. By the way, I'm super tiny channel, I don't have a single sponsorship, I never had any, but if I would have, this is where I would plug in like a therapy online service or something, so if you're watching that, call me. The second big pillar of my observations about Russian business is what I would call seriousness and formalism. In the majority of the companies I worked for in Russia, if you are in management, you're kind of surrounded by this almost like a masculine culture. You know, managers, the directors, CEOs are serious men in suits who are doing a serious business. And when I see that, I wanna laugh. And I mean, like, even before I became manager myself, even when I was an employee and we had like this power distance, like when I would observe that, like I would find it hilarious because these people, they are speaking nonsense sometimes and they are making obviously stupid decisions with these serious, straight and intimidating faces. Like, I want to say, come on, like, don't take yourself too seriously. Take your job seriously, but don't take yourself that seriously. And kind of the common sense in Russian business is that everything should be very serious, which maybe you can guess, it's not that I deeply resonate with, and I actually doubt if all of these very serious managers actually enjoy what they do and the way they do it. I don't know, like it's I struggle to believe that they do. And my belief is that you can kind of be both. You can be very serious, not about your work, like about yourself, or completely unserious, and it's not kind of connected to the quality of your work. If you ask me, there should be a place for both. Another point is, I think in Russian business we have a lot of protocols. Like, I make jokes that Russians lack protocols, but we do. We have a lot of rules, and sometimes following, like reinforcing people to follow the rule is more important than the content of the rule itself. And maintaining the order is often more important than many other things. Certainly more important than enjoying what you do. I mean, like, even the idea of enjoying what you do, it's like off the table. Of course, people think about it, but it's so not the first thing that people think of. I don't know, if you have one-to-one with your manager, they will not be asking you, are you enjoying what you do at work? Or it will be the very last question that they will ask. Because I think the focus is not there. The focus is on maintaining the order and following the kind of the protocol, and it prevails over everything. And speaking of seriousness and formalism, like dress code, I know that it's not only a Russian thing, and like me personally, I was kind of lucky to work the majority of my time in companies without a dress code, but I know that there are companies with a pretty strict dress code, and also there is a formal way of how you address a senior person or person in a higher position in Russian language, which kind of feels old school to me, but I still know that in many companies kind of things like that exist. Now let's move to a more positive side of things, and the next thing that I want to talk about is camaraderie. I wonder if this word is used in English, camaraderie, but I hope you get what I mean. First of all, in Russia, I worked with one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. People that I worked with actually cared about the result of their job. These are the people that get shit done. And finally, I created one of the strongest personal bonds with my colleagues at work in Russia. With some of them, we're friends until this day. We know each other's families. We saved each other many times during our lives. And I don't think I noticed anything like that so far in European culture. Maybe it's just the Netherlands, but compared to what I experienced in Russia, people are much more reserved. They don't make that many friends at work and rather keep their close friend circle from their, like school friends or university friends. Now I'm actually thinking that, sometimes these bonds, they appear as a response to, like you unite against a common enemy, your management. But either way, we spend so much time at work. We spend so much time with our colleagues. And with many of them, it was such a pleasure to work with. And we created bonds for life. Actually, I think I remember some local Russian statistics. The top reason why people don't quit their job even though they don't like it is because of the team. It's because of the relationship that they build. It's because of these bonds that they have. I will link the research if I find it. If I don't quote me on that. But what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is that in the majority, again, of the companies I used to work for in Russia, the people I worked with were amazing. They were so professional, so smart, very good at what they do, very caring, very supporting, and people-wise, 90% of the time, it was a fantastic experience. And I think that some of this rather old school, Russian business cultures and practices may actually slowly go away with this new generation of people, managers, and leaders. And if you're curious about this old school versus modern approach, not only in the context of Russian business culture, but in general, I actually made a video about how to speak to executives from this particular lens. So check it out if you like, and I will see you there.